Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is Robert from Islam for Europeans. Please like and subscribe to the channel. In this video, I wanted to make a follow-up to you know what people think about when it comes to the political question of Muslims in Europe, because you have the political right, but the political right is so vehemently anti-Islam, and especially when it comes to leaders of said parties. There is another faction of the right that does not specifically hate Islam, but they see this kind of cultural degeneration of their traditional cultures, and it's that they see Islam as basically part and parcel of this greater operation, to create this whole like kind of global society. So you can't, like I said before in my previous videos, you can't really ally with these people. And I don't, I think ally is, an incorrect term, because you're assuming that, we're going to join forces, we're going to go to the same dinners, we're going to create a, this kind of organization, we're both all interacting with one another. I've never advocated for that. And I don't think that's a good idea. When it comes to the anti-Islam right, they want nothing to do with Muslims or Islam. And when it comes to the dissident right, allying them with any way, A, can get you canceled, and B, like it's we don't agree on everything either, right? And then when it comes to the political left, they just end up advocating for the same kind of interventionist policies in the Muslim world. They hold positions that are anathema to Islamic principles. They support organizations that where we don't agree with their ideology, and they push those ideologies on our children. So, like I said in a previous video, regarding that you can't really ally with the left or the right, I still hold that position. I guess I'm making this video more as, in a theoretical world, if Islam for Europeans was a think tank, where, people in power would come to us and say, how do we resolve these issues? Whether that's Islamic organizations or non-Islamic organizations. At least we have a position that, is a moral position, that doesn't harm anybody, and provides a concrete solutions that are going to be a win-win for both Muslims and non-Muslim Europeans. um, and you have to look at this like a Venn diagram. There are Muslims who are within the Venn diagram, where they're willing to dialogue and establish discourse with the other side, that they agree with your non-Muslim Christians. I'm talking about Europe specifically, but you can extrapolate these ideas to any non-Muslim country. We can probably agree to many things. The problem is, when it comes to the Muslim side, even establishing discourse, with these people, or the rub is, if we hold positions or support positions that the right also agrees with, then those parties will gain more traction. And if you give them an inch, then they'll take a mile. So one day, we're protesting against certain school agendas, and the next day these far right parties get elected, and we gave them more traction, and all the Muslims are rounded up at gunpoint and put into pogroms, or sent back to their countries of origin involuntarily. Right. So, and that's I don't, you can say that that's a legitimate fear, and it's a legitimate reason why Muslims tend not to vote for right-wing parties. And then, when it comes to the European side, there's probably many of them who don't have a problem with Islam per se, and are willing to dialogue with Muslims. But at the same time, if they're seen holding a position that the more extreme side agrees with, they're going to use that as a way to say, look, you can't dialogue with these people, they all hate us, and they won't gain any traction within their own side. So, the beauty of this kind of theoretical, 9 point solution that I'm going to suggest is that no one really needs to ally with anyone. And, no one needs to dialogue with, the members of their own party who are maybe on the more extreme side, or that's the extreme right or the extreme left. And, the fear on the non-Muslim European side is that if we ally with Muslims anyway, then our culture is going to die out, and the next thing you know, we'll be a hated minority within our own homelands. And I mean, it doesn't look pretty, given the statistics that we're seeing a more globalized world. We're seeing more conflict. We're seeing really horrible things going on in the world today, and no one's proposing any solutions to that. And at the very least, we can say that even though this video probably won't amount to anything in terms of changing the political scene, at least we can have a moral position that I think most people within the Venn diagram would agree with. And those who lie outside that Venn diagram, whether they're non-Muslim Europeans on the right, or whether they're Muslims on the left, or whether they're Muslims on the conservative right, they can't still really say anything about this about this solution. I don't know. I mean, it's food for thought. I'm sure there's going to be critique and analysis, of this kind of like approach. There's going to be people who completely disagree with me. And they might propose, even people who agree with me might propose like different iterations of the same design, or they may say that this work or this doesn't work. But at least we have a way forward to say, because there's a lot of people in Europe who are interested in Islam, but they don't want to convert because their qualm is that no one's going to support them, A, and B, it's going to result in really bad outcomes, for my people. And then if we take the other extreme approach, then you would be advocating for positions that would harden Muslims in general, right? So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into this, basically like a 9 point solution that I proposed, right? So, point number one, and this is what we've encouraged at Islam for Europeans: a communitarian approach to the dawah, or spreading the message of Islam, that would encourage the converts of that nation. For example, in England, the white British, in Slovakia, the white Slovaks, in Portugal, the native Portuguese, and so on and so forth. Those who do convert to Islam, they should have their own organizations, their own fora. They should collectivize in the same way that Muslims have already collectivized in the West already, right? So, this would be a feasible approach. Like if they're having an organization that they run themselves, and they have like this kind of group identity, it will be a lot easier for them to convert. And on top of that, what you would see is naturally they would keep all the aesthetics and things in their culture that are not against Islam. That their ancestors have kind of done for centuries. So you can think of things like the traditional dress. If you look at the many different peoples of Europe, they have different traditional dress that was worn in back in the day. I'm not talking about the decadent Western style, like a scandalous type dress. But you can look at my video on returning to tradition in terms of like religious dress. Even if it's just for Eid prayer and Juma prayer, I think these converts should wear the clothing of their ancestors. The cuisine, like many people on the right say, what has happened to European cuisine? It's been it's been replaced. In the UK, beef Wellington is gone, bangers and mash is gone, fish and chips is gone. Now, the official UK cuisine is chicken tikka masala or something like that. But even if it's for iftar, I think that the converts to Islam from whatever country you're from, as they're creating this kind of group identity, they should incorporate the cuisine of their ancestors, minus the pork and minus the alcohol, of course. But that's easily adjustable. The architecture, and I'm going to get into mosques later, but there's no need to build mosques that look like they're from a different part of the world, right? There's plenty of architectural styles that have been abandoned, whether that's churches or other edifices that are just being unused, and they're being bulldozed down and turned into a Starbucks. It'd be a lot easier just to use that instead of breaking ground on a new mosque and building it in a style that becomes an eyesore. And then the political right uses that as basically a recruiting poster to say, look, the skyline of our city is changing, right? So, the arc. What else? The sports and games. The British have different games. Canadians have hockey. The Scots have the caber toss. Bring these things back. There's nothing haram about these things, and a burgeoning sub community of native converts should incorporate all these things into their aesthetics. And obviously, they would be marrying each other and having kids. So this would actually increase. If someone would be saying is actually increasing the total fertility rate of the countries that they're living in, without having to put anyone into pogroms, right? So that's point number one. Point number two is that we want, and this is goes part and parcel with what I was saying about we don't want to harm anybody. The safety and security of Muslims in Europe currently living in the West. Right now, I'm just talking about Europe specifically here as a caveat. Like I know there's Western outpost countries, Canada, United States, New Zealand, but let's just concentrate on Europe for a second. The argument that would come from Muslims on the left or conservative Muslims is that if you propose an idea such as this, this means that if a political party, like a far right party in Europe, gains power, then that would cause harm to the Muslims. But in this type of deal, we advocate for the safety and security of Muslims currently living in the West, right? So as long as they're allowed to practice their religion, they're contributing members to the society. We're offering things that could actually, protect, these countries against things that are negative forces. You know, um, I don't want to specifically say what they are, but like certain agendas that are being pushed on our kids and so on and so forth. Islam would provide the Muslims are already providing solutions to that. They're heading these types of protests. And use it as a bargaining chip. If you're using a communitarian approach to the dawah, use it as a bargaining chip. Say, look, we can establish these sub communities of converts all throughout Europe. But for the ones who are currently living here, Muslims who are living here legally, they should be able to stay unless they choose to go back to their countries of origin voluntarily. And I'm going to get into that later. Number three, I already touched on this one. Mosques should be built in the architectural style of the country. So I already talked about that. So number four is that both Muslims and non-Muslims who break the law, they should be punished to the fullest extent of that. So it doesn't matter whether you belong to like a white gang that abuses people. It doesn't matter if you're a grooming gang that distributes drugs and gets people drunk and terrorizes neighborhoods. They need to be punished. You need to have law enforcement. You need to have people there to enforce the law. And Muslims, we should stand up for justice, even if it's against our own selves. So if Muslims are breaking the law, absolutely, they should be punished, just as non-Muslims, should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Now, I don't agree with police brutality. I know that video has been circulating around with that people who've been beaten up, and I know that those people attacked others, which is horrible. But once you've subdued somebody, further abuse, you've done your job, you've got them in handcuffs. There's no need to go further, and all this is going to do is just galvanize, the people on the left. So that's not what we want. Okay, and then number five, Yeah, so protection of all religious edifices, from graffiti, from arson, from damage. Like this is a fundamental belief of Muslims. We don't damage or or destroy or harm, religious buildings or insignia, from any religion really. So I mean, we see that we see the mockery of religion. You probably seen, the Last Supper that was performed at the Olympic ceremony recently. You know, like we Muslims should be on the forefront of taking a stand against these things. Because we believe in all the prophets. We believe in Jesus, peace be upon him, and we should be against this. It's like the degradation of religion has just been it's been a net negative. I mean, people, they're leading these hedonistic lifestyles, and like they're spending. They're not raising families, and you see, you know this type of, a secularization has just been, I think, really harmful for, traditional lifestyles. Yeah, and then number six. Now, this is kind of a controversial one, and like I'm going to take a different reason as to why I believe this, and that is a moratorium on current immigration to Europe proper, with exceptions for reunification of families and whatnot. I think that if you look at the crisis of Muslims in horrible situations. And again, this will tie into the point number seven. Um, it's incredibly expensive to house them in Europe proper. It costs a lot more money. And on top of that, rent prices are just absolutely ridiculous. They're incredibly sky high. And this is just exacerbating the crisis. And on top of that, only a percentage of people who are new immigrating to Europe aren't even Muslim. So the right will use this common argument, that it's Muslim immigration, but the fact of the matter is, when you look at the numbers, only less than half of these people who are coming in are Muslims. If you look at the top three countries for immigration in the UK, it's India, which is like 17% Muslim, China, which is only like 5, 6, 7% Muslim or something like that, and Nigeria, which is 50% Muslim. So, like it's people are starting to realize that it's not an Islam thing. So I think that if you look at it from a numbers perspective, lives are at stake here. I think you can take a portion of that money. It's instead of trying to house all these people, and then it's not never going to end. I mean, at one point the money is going to run out. You can only house them in places for so long if they're illegally coming into Europe. You could feed and power an entire refugee camp in the Muslim world with a fraction of that money. And a lot of these Muslims living in the Muslim world are in super dire situations. So lives are at stake. They need power, they need food, they need water, and like I said, it's an exorbitant amount of money at this point. With the current crisis going on, to house people in the UK and France. And on top of that, their religious values are going to, they're not going to hold on to their religious values. It's especially in France, it's a very secular society. It's very difficult to maintain one's religion. So but again, I don't advocate for any violence. I mean, you see some extreme right-wing accounts saying that you should like sink boats and just kill people en masse. This is completely unacceptable. It's terrible. It's Fed posting. It's not ever something we would advocate for at Islam for Europeans, right? And again, this is excluding Muslims that are already living in Europe legally. I mean, if they're obeying the law and they're advocating for a communitarian approach to the Dawah, and they're taking a stand against agendas that are net negative for Europe socially and religiously. Those are two important bargaining chips that would completely change the game, right? So that is point number six. Yeah, so point number seven, and this is the big one, is that in a theoretical world, where we had political influence, um, the best thing is to advocate for the restabilization of Muslim countries and African countries, and basically in the global South. I mean, the refugee crisis has been absolutely exacerbated by foreign policy by Western governments. Um, whether that's by military interventionism or supporting of puppet dictators or like high interest loans. This has created a real um, sad situation in many countries of the Muslim world. Not all. You still have Turkey, you still have Malaysia, and those countries are stable. People want to move to Turkey. They want to move to Malaysia, right? So when you have a situation where these countries are destabilized, yeah, it's going to exacerbate a refugee crisis. And we see that there's some people on the political right who want a more isolationist policy when it comes to the West in general, Europe proper, United States. But unfortunately, they don't have any political traction, which makes it far more difficult, right? And yeah, so point number eight, and this is a point that some people in dissident right circles is voluntary repatriation. So, like I said, I'm against any type of involuntary repatriation. I never think that people should be forced to move somewhere, forced to one place to another, especially when they've been living here, they've been if they're contributing positively to the society. I don't agree with involuntary repatriation. Voluntary repatriation is when you just simply provide incentives, for people who want to move, make hijrah, for Muslims who want to make hijrah from Europe proper to the Muslim world. Many Muslims already agree with that. They don't want to be in the West forever. Some of them, they want to stay. Others, they just would feel more comfortable, in a Muslim country or the country that their parents came from. So you don't have to force people to do anything, but simply if you provide incentives, like voluntarily, many people want to repatriate. Right. So that's number eight. And finally, this is optional. It's kind of outside the box. The if you talk to people on the right in Europe, their goal is like they want a country that's majority European, that they run themselves, right? And this has been their goal for many of them, especially those on the extreme right. For many Muslims, who are involved in different, political organizations, either they're conservative, many of them are conservative, but they want Islam to be, a dominant force in Europe. They, lament, the loss of Andalusia, and they, they want a country where they can practice their religion freely. So this would be completely theoretical. But what you could do is you have two basically kind of micro states set up, like similar to like Hong Kong or Macau, where there's no like there's no violence or any type of like violent revolution to start these countries. But what you basically have is basically like a small Muslim emirate or a microstate in Europe proper, with coastal access, that they run themselves. And I'm sure some Muslims want to repatriate there, and you could call it something like New Andalusia, right? And it doesn't need to be large. Like if they prefer to live in a country where they can practice their religion freely, and they're bringing up their families within Islam, they can run the country according to the Quran and Sunnah, and have coastal access, and there's so you can have New Andalusia. And in the Muslim world, there's 65 Muslim majority countries that have lots of basically empty land. They're burgeoning countries. Like you see U.S. hegemony, kind of falling, and the BRICS, and then basically it's going to become a multipolar world. There are countries who would very gladly give a plot of land as like, an emirate or, a Hong Kong style country for, Europeans, that they would manage themselves, with coastal access. They could, live a traditional lifestyle, and that's a country that they run. So this has been done, before, throughout history. But this is, something completely theoretical. And like I said, it's not, I'm not making this video because I want to reach out to political parties and say, this is what you need to do. You need to implement this. I'm just providing like food for thought. That if you want political solutions, you need to think outside of the box. The last thing that I want is conflict between Muslims and Europeans. I think that the level of mutual animosity is very high. And those who live within the kind of Venn diagram where they are willing to establish discourse with Muslims or Europeans or vice versa, there's not much. I'm sure they would come to agreement on certain philosophical issues and also some disagreements, but there's nothing really concrete or any type of roadmap or game plan for providing solutions that are a win-win. Right. So, that's basically like a 9 point theory of what I would recommend. If a political party came to me and said, Rob, we want your opinion. We're trying to reach out to the Muslim community, want more of them to vote for us. What do you suggest? Right. And like I said, politics can never really solve the issue, especially the current way they're being run. But like if you have this as a potential solution, at the very least, we can say, this is a position that we hold where people can feel comfortable converting to Islam because they feel that their culture will not be dying out. So that's my take on that. Let me know what you think in the chat. If you completely disagree with me, by all means, blast me. Send me a comment. Tell me that I'm completely off my rocker. Something like this will never work. Or if you agree with me, but you think it should be tweaked a little bit, or you provide a different iteration, please let me know as well. But Insha Allah, above all, we ask Allah to keep Muslims safe throughout the world. We ask our families and communities to be guided to the truth. We ask for for people to be able to live in peace and security. That's basically what basically my thoughts on the matter for these kind of like hot button issues, right? So that's my time for the day. I'm Robert from Islam for Europeans. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.